Chapter 4. One is vulnerable where one loves. Mess Lethierry's heart and hand were always ready, a large heart and a large hand. His failing was that admirable one, self-confidence. He had a certain fashion of his own of undertaking to do a thing. It was a solemn fashion. He said, "I give my word of honour to do it, with God's help." That said, he went through with his duty. He put his faith in God, nothing more. His rare church-going was merely formal. At sea he was superstitious. Nevertheless, the storm had not yet arisen which could daunt him. One reason of this was his impatience of opposition. He could tolerate it neither from the ocean nor anything else. He meant to have his way. So much the worse for the sea if it thwarted him. It might try, if it would, but Mess Lethierry would not give in. A refractory wave could no more stop him than an angry neighbour. What he had said was said. What he planned out was done. He bent neither before an objection nor before the tempest. The word "no" had no existence for him, whether it was in the mouth of a man or in the angry muttering of a thundercloud. In the teeth of all he went on in his way. He would take no refusals. Hence his obstinacy in life and his intrepidity on the ocean. He seasoned his simple meal of fish soup for himself, knowing the quantities of pepper, salt, and herbs which it required, and was as well pleased with the cooking as with the meal. To complete the sketch of Lethierry's peculiarities, the reader must conjure a being to whom the putting on of a surtout would amount to a transfiguration, whom a landsman's greatcoat would convert into a strange animal. One who, standing with his locks blown about by the wind, might have represented old Jean Bart, but who, in the landsman's round hat, would have looked an idiot. Awkward in cities, wild and redoubtable at sea. A man with broad shoulders fit for a porter. One who indulged in no oaths, was rarely in anger, whose voice had a soft accent which became like thunder in a speaking trumpet. A peasant who had read something of the philosophy of Diderot and D'Alembert. A Guernsey man who had seen the great Revolution, a learned ignoramus, free from bigotry, but indulging in visions, with more faith in the White Lady than in the Holy Virgin, possessing the strength of Polyphemus, the perseverance of Columbus, with a little of the bull in his nature, and a little of the child. Add to these physical and mental peculiarities a somewhat flat nose, large cheeks, a set of teeth still perfect, a face filled with wrinkles, and which seems to have been buffeted by the waves and subjected to the beating of the winds of 40 years, a brow in which the storm and tempest were plainly written, an incarnation of a rock in the open sea. Add to this, too, a good-tempered smile, always ready to light up his weather-beaten countenance, and you have before you Mess Lethierry. Mess Lethierry had two special objects of affection only. Their names were Durande and Déruchette. Chapter 1. Prattle and Smoke. The human body might well be regarded as a mere simulacrum, but it envelops our reality, it darkens our light, and broadens the shadow in which we live. The soul is the reality of our existence. Strictly speaking, the human visage is a mask. The true man is that which exists under what is called man. If that being, which thus exists sheltered and secreted behind that illusion which we call the flesh, could be approached, more than one strange revelation would be made. The vulgar error is to mistake the outward husk for the living spirit. Yonder maiden, for example, if we could see her as she really is, might she not figure as some bird of the air? A bird transmuted into a young maiden? What could be more exquisite? Picture it in your own home, and call it Déruchette. Delicious creature! One might be almost tempted to say, "Good morning, Mademoiselle Goldfinch." The wings are invisible, but the chirping may still be heard. Sometimes, too, she pipes a clear, loud song. In her childlike prattle the creature is perhaps inferior, but in her song, How superior to humanity! When womanhood dawns, this angel flies away, but sometimes returns, bringing back a little one to a mother. Meanwhile, she who is one day to be a mother is for a long while a child. The girl becomes a maiden, fresh and joyous as the lark. Noting her movements, we feel as if it was good of her not to fly away. The dear familiar companion moves at her own sweet will about the house, flits from branch to branch, or rather from room to room, goes to and fro, approaches and retires, plumes her wings, or rather combs her hair, and makes all kinds of gentle noises, murmurings of unspeakable delight to certain ears. She asks a question and is answered, is asked something in return and chirps a reply. It is delightful to chat with her when tired of serious talk, for this creature carries with her something of a skyey element. She is, as it were, a thread of gold, interwoven with your sombre thoughts. You feel almost grateful to her for her kindness in not making herself invisible, when it would be so easy for her to be even impalpable, for the beautiful is a necessary of life. There is, in this world, no function more important than that of being charming. The forest glade would be incomplete without the humming-bird. To shed joy around, to radiate happiness, to cast light upon dark days, to be the golden thread of our destiny, and the very spirit of grace and harmony, is this not to render a service? Does not beauty confer a benefit upon us, even by the simple fact of being beautiful? Here and there we meet with one who possesses that fairy-like power of enchanting all about her. Sometimes she is ignorant herself of this magical influence, which is, however, for that reason, only the more perfect. Her presence lights up the home. Her approach is like a cheerful warmth. She passes by, and we are content. She stays a while, and we are happy. To behold her is to live. She is the aurora with a human face. She has no need to do more than simply to be. She makes an Eden of the house. Paradise breathes from her, and she communicates this delight to all, without taking any greater trouble than that of existing beside them. Is it not a thing divine to have a smile which, none know how, has the power to lighten the weight of that enormous chain which all the living in common drag behind them? Déruchette possessed this smile. We may even say that this smile was Déruchette herself. There is one thing which has more resemblance to ourselves than even our face, and that is our expression. But there is yet another thing which more resembles us than this, and that is our smile. Déruchette smiling was simply Déruchette. There is something peculiarly attractive in the Jersey and Guernsey race. The women, particularly the young, are remarkable for a pure and exquisite beauty. Their complexion is a combination of the Saxon fairness with the proverbial ruddiness of the Norman people. Rosy cheeks and blue eyes, but the eyes want brilliancy. The English training dulls them. Their liquid glances will be irresistible whenever the secret is found of giving them that depth which is the glory of the Parisienne. Happily, English women are not yet transformed into the Parisian type. Déruchette was not a Parisian, yet she was certainly not a Guernesiaise. Lethierry had brought her up to be neat and delicate and pretty, and so she was. Déruchette had, at times, an air of bewitching languor and a certain mischief in the eye, which was altogether involuntary. She scarcely knew, perhaps, the meaning of the word love, and yet not unwillingly ensnared those about her in the toils. But all this in her was innocent. She never thought of marrying. Déruchette had the prettiest little hands in the world, and little feet to match them. Sweetness and goodness reigned throughout her person. Her family and fortune were her uncle Mess Lethierry. Her occupation was only to live her daily life. Her accomplishments were the knowledge of a few songs. Her intellectual gifts were summed up in her simple innocence. She had the graceful repose of the West Indian woman, mingled at times with giddiness and vivacity, with the teasing playfulness of a child, yet with a dash of melancholy. Her dress was somewhat rustic, and like that peculiar to her country, elegant, though not in accordance with the fashions of great cities, for she wore flowers in her bonnet all the year round. Add to all this an open brow, a neck supple and graceful, chestnut hair, a fair skin slightly freckled with exposure to the sun, a mouth somewhat large but well defined, and visited from time to time by a dangerous smile. This was Déruchette. Sometimes in the evening, a little after sunset, at the moment when the dusk of the sky mingles with the dusk of the sea, and twilight invests the waves with a mysterious awe, the people beheld, entering the harbour of Saint-Sampson, upon the dark rolling waters, a strange undefined thing. A monstrous form which puffed and blew, a horrid machine which roared like a wild beast and smoked like a volcano, a species of hydra foaming among the breakers and leaving behind it a dense cloud as it rushed on towards the town with a frightful beating of its fins and a throat belching forth flame. This was Durande. Chapter 2. The Old Story of Utopia. A steamboat was a prodigious novelty in the waters of the Channel in 1820. The whole coast of Normandy was long strangely excited by it. Nowadays 10 or a dozen steam vessels, crossing and recrossing within the bounds of the horizon, scarcely attract a glance from loiterers on the shore. At the most, some persons, whose interest or business it is to note such things, will observe the indications in their smoke of whether they burn Welsh or Newcastle coal. They pass, and that is all. Welcome if coming home, a pleasant passage if outward bound. Folks were less calm on the subject of these wonderful inventions in the first quarter of the present century, and the new and strange machines and their long lines of smoke regarded with no good will by the Channel Islanders. In that puritanical archipelago, where the Queen of England has been censured for violating the Scriptures by using chloroform during her accouchement, the first steam vessel which made its appearance received the name of the Devil Boat. In the eyes of these worthy fishermen, once Catholics, now Calvinists, but always bigots, it seemed to be a portion of the infernal regions which had been somehow set afloat. A local preacher selected for his discourse the question of whether man has the right to make fire and water work together when God has divided them. This beast, composed of iron and fire, did it not resemble Leviathan? Was it not an attempt to bring chaos again into the universe? This is not the only occasion on which the progress of civilization has been stigmatized as a return to chaos.